if we're talking about kayfabe, brother, and we're talking about the matches, and there are people who are hybrid fans, if you will, like myself, or like Chris Connor, like Ant Evans, who like both pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. And the hybrid work shoot style has been prominent in both sports, since the dawn of both of them. And someone who's making that more mainstream again is Josh Barnett with his Bloodsport events. Chris, how familiar are you with the Bloodsport events? And like, do you keep up? Like, Shayna Baszler fought Masha Slamovich. She's returning soon this year again, or this event coming up. The Creed brothers, Julius and Brutus, are going to fight in Bloodsport. They announced someone else, but it's like sort of a forbidden door, and they're bringing that Bushido style Pride shoot, work, shoot, pancrase stuff to the forefront again. Are you a fan of that?
Yes and no. I mean, look, I give Barnett credit because look, the fact that he can get all these people, and when I mean people, I mean the big, pardon my language, the big swinging dicks, WWE, TNA, AEW, New Japan, All Japan, MLW, to the table. I mean, think of that. He's getting all these people to go, okay, we'll lend you this talent, we'll lend you that talent, we'll lend you this person, we'll lend you that person for an event. That itself is just incredible, because that is just like pulling teeth. And that he gets these people who understand, okay, this is going to be a bit of a shoot, a bit of a pro wrestling, a bit of a work. We're blending it in. I commend him for that. It's tough because if you value grappling, if you're an MMA fan, you can see through it and go, yeah, it's still a bit phony, because they're not going fully on the way, because they can't. But you appreciate how far they're going, and it's, as I said, it's tough because it's like full 3/4 speed, half speed. That they're doing it, and they're tricking the lazy eye. But if you really love MMA, it's like, yeah, I see what they're doing. I can appreciate it, but it's almost like if you know magic tricks and you can see through, it's like, oh yeah, I see that invisible, the invisible rope here. Damn it! But it's good, and I give Barnett credit, because what he's doing, man, that is just impressive.
Yeah,
pulling all of this off.
Yeah, dude, I saw Rampage Jackson do like a work, shoot work at Bloodsport recently, and it was amazing. And then, I mean, on this card, you have Shayna Baszler taking on Miyu. And then you have, like I said, the Creed brothers, of all people. Like, you'd think, like, I can't believe that. And then you have Homicide versus Mike Santana lined up. So the real prohibited portal, again, WWE showing they're willing to step through it. And I like this shoot work thing, although, like, when it comes to Lola Vice and Shayna Baszler in like the underground match, I thought it got a little hokey at times in the apex there. But I'm not the biggest fan of that style of match, and doing like, what Kane and Brock did in WWE, or doing like, when Ronda tried to do the sort of work shoot MMA style pro wrestling match, because like people will just watch MMA if they want to see that, and I'm a huge MMA fan. So I just like what they're doing here. And I like, Josh Barnett is Shayna Baszler's manager as well. And so it's he directly talks to WWE, and they're clearly interested in whatever he's got going on with this. And we do know that WWE's telling their talent to work a little more strong style as well, like the younger people, getting them ready allegedly for like when Julia comes in, and these like marigold girls who are going to be taught to work stiff like they do in Japan, they're getting everyone ready sort of for that thing. And I think rotating people like the Creed brother, like the Creed brothers come across like these all-American white meat baby face type guys. So when you put them in Bloodsport, it's going to show another side of them. That's, I don't know, man, this could really change their whole gimmick and the way people view them public perception wise, and I think Bloodsport's a cool concept, and I say more of it. Now, as far as it taking off in the mainstream, I'm not sure about that. But I'm just happy that WWE talent are allowed to work with certain clearly hand-selected people and promote. Because it's not like WWE's working with GCW flat out, but when they do GCW, like Josh Barnett's GCW Bloodsport, which is like its own thing, they're allowed to work with that. And of course, last time there were WWE Superstars in attendance. So, let's see more of it, and because Dana White infamously said that he doesn't believe there's a crossover anymore between pro wrestling and MMA fans, that he thinks it's non-existent. And I just disagree with that. What say you, Chris Connor? You think there's an overlap? I think if it has gone away, that it's being reignited once again with these crossovers. What do you think about that?
No, because here's the tough part. And I get why he says it, and I look. I appreciate MMA fans can appreciate, the Brock Lesnar's, the Creeds, and the Caesars, because or the Caspers, because they both were accomplished wrestlers when they both got into, where Duke, both were All-Americans at Duke, Lola Vice, or Valley Laredo, as we know from Bellator.
Yep.
But it's just, when you see an MMA fight, and when you see it in pro wrestling, it's the whole thing. It's just painful, because everything you look at in MMA, the grappling, the scrambling, the moves, and then you look at pro wrestling, you look and go, oh crap. No, it's just bastardized. Nobody gets out of a rear naked choke by just pulling the arms off, or when you get an arm bar that deep, they're not just pulling, getting off and just pulling it back on like a bicep curl. That does not exist. It's like when you and I would watch Rocky, as kids, and like, oh yeah, Rocky's just throwing and going, oh yeah, him again. That does not happen.
Yeah.
So I get where Dana's going with that. I like both. And I think there are fans who can like both. But for a lot of hardcore MMA fans, they look at pro wrestling and go, oh my God, this is as goofy as can be. And WWE fans look at UFC and go, oh my God, this is stupid. Why? This is boring. They're just lying on the ground doing nothing. Stand them up. Stand and bang, bro. Stand and bang.
Yeah.
That's what I hear every time when I go down into a Northeast fight on Mohegan Sun. You'll hear people go, stand and bang, bro, stand and bang. So unfortunately, it's just, you have your MMA fans, you have your pro wrestling fans, you have people like right in the middle, but it's just too different for both parties.
Yeah, and like, I know, like with jiu-jitsu guys who don't like wrestling, they look at it like, we see a chain wrestling situation or whatever, and they just look at that as stupid, because some of the submission holds, they're like, well, that's not how you do that, or you wouldn't do this, So,
like an ankle, like a Kurt Angle's ankle lock.
Yeah.
You talk to anybody who does like ankle, leg locks and ankle locks, they look at that and go, that's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, it's not
nobody would ever tap out to that. It's just like an Anderson Silva will up kick you and knock you out, with an up kick.
A front
That's
roll,
just asking to get knocked out. You are crazy.
Yeah,
but in pro wrestling, they pull that off. It's just the most dangerous move ever.
Yeah, it's funny, man. But I mean, yeah, we're both fans, so clearly there is some crossover. But speaking of crossover, right? So, Dave Meltzer, dummy Dave, like, he never knows what he's talking about. And he was saying, Shinsuke's off TV, and Shinsuke, look at what they done with Shinsuke, and he's underutilized and blah, 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 blah. Of course, he'll criticize WWE for that, but not AEW. But that's neither here nor there. We're not making this about Dave here. We're going to talk about Shinsuke Nakamura, who then did an interview saying, hey, I'm putting on dream matches in the WWE, and I love America, and I'm here, and this is what I want to do. And, Meltzer's like, I don't know what he's taking time off just to surf and do jiu-jitsu and stuff. It's crazy. Well, he wasn't doing that. He was training Rei Tsuruya, undefeated, 10-0, 1-0 or 2-0 now in the UFC. and he was training him. He cornered him. Of course, I've said it a bunch on the show. Shinsuke, former training partner of Lyoto Machida, former roommate of Tito Ortiz, if I'm not mistaken, or pardon me, the other way around, trained with Tito and roommate of Lyoto Machida. He's had some MMA fights himself. And I think he even fought in Pride, if I'm not mistaken, Shinsuke. Or maybe it was right after Pride was a thing. I'd have to look into that again, do my Wikipedias or my Googleses. But Ray Tsuruya, man, he comes in and he gets a win. Knowing Dana White, how he and like, you know, his relationship, like being willing to bring in Punk and Brock Lesnar and that. And you have guys like Montez Ford saying, yeah, I would. He's like, yo, if it wasn't for Bianca, I would. He's like, I would be trying to get an MMA fight. He's like, it is something I'm interested in, actually, is fighting in the UFC. I know Jack Gallagher is not with WWE, but he was there, and now he's bare knuckle boxing. He's pretty good. You have guys who can scrap like Tyler Bate or whatever, right? Let's say.
Here's the trouble, though. And
yeah,
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so let's say a Shinsuke, though, he's a real shooter. Let's say he wants to, maybe not him because he's older now, but you know, he's rolling with real guys and he's training with real guys. And let's say one of these WWE guys want to cross over. Do you think UFC is more open to that? And sorry, what were you actually going to say first? And then just let me know, like, do you think UFC is more open to that, or do you think they should stay away from that because that'll make it too hokey and gimmicky?
What's the payoff for all parties? I mean, let's all right. So if you're with WWE, let's say Montez Ford. You go, all right, Montez Ford, you have high hopes for him. He goes to UFC, goes, all right, hey, I want to get a UFC fight. UFC goes, all right, we're going to get you a fight. And they give him just a tomato can. Not even a top 15 fighter. They go, we give you some regional guy. Like Bellator did for Jake Hager. We remember those. And Montez gets knocked out.
Yeah.
Which we've seen that happen. I mean, we all joke here, people like, oh, you know, it's the blah, blah, blah. These are big men who throw big shots, and that happens. I mean, I think it's just too risky because you can't just throw some of these guys here from the WWE into the UFC.
Right. That's what people need to understand too. Like, not everyone's Brock Lesnar or Jake Hager. You know what I mean? Not everybody or Bobby Lashley who have that legit background and are freaks, you know? Not everybody's that. So not everybody could transition. I think a guy maybe like a Tyler Bate could, because those lighter guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, wait a minute here. Tyler Bate is what?
Freak athlete, dude. He's a freak athlete, that kid, man. He's freaky, dude. His strength and his speed, that kid is. I don't know. I've never seen him like actually fight, but I know he really trains like a Karrion Kross. Isn't he like a real bare knuckle guy back in the day or something? So, or at least that's the claims. I don't know. He fought in like Kenpo or Muay Thai or whatever back in the day. So,
I'm not saying
send 40. I'm not saying send 40-year-old pro wrestlers in and let's see a WWE versus UFC. I'm not saying that, and I understand the difference there. And I'm not one of these marks who think like, oh, there's a crossover where, you know, these guys could really do it. But I wouldn't. There's certain guys like a Montez Ford. He is a freak athlete to where, I don't know, can he scrap? I've never seen him kickboxing or anything, but like there's guys who are pretty freak athletes that I would not be mad at if we saw some sort of crossover. But I'm interested in seeing things like Shinsuke training. Like, that's awesome. You know, I love like that. All that does is help raise that kid's stock. And especially when UFC is making plays at Japan currently right now as well in this undefeated race.
I get that part, but it's like, think of PFL, which is supposed to be as Dane likes to call it, it's a step down, which it isn't, but it's still pretty good. Imagine you throw Tyler Bate, who's 175 pounds, against Logan Storley, Lorenz Larkin, Neiman Gracie, Andre Koreshkov. They will go out there and they will just dog walk them.
Yeah.
No, and I mean right. Dog walk them. When you put in, you know, let's say, as I said, Shinsuke Nakamura against even Timothy Johnson, who took on Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, but would Nakamura fight at heavyweight though? I don't know if he'd fight that
all
high.
right,
He'd
put him in.
down.
He's at 200. Let's say put 205. Put him in against
205. Exactly though, against who
Bader. Put him in against a guy like Lynn Vassell. I mean, it's same thing. It's just
Alex Pereira would clear the whole WWE locker room on his own. One guy. Like, I hate on anyone, but
and the worst part is it makes the WWE. I mean, if you're a WWE, you're trying to make these guys say, "Look, they are premier athletes. They are." There's no win. I mean, I get the part. In theory, it's great when it's Brock, and Brock did a lot. But if you imagine, as I said, if you all of a sudden the Creed brothers, you see them go to the UFC and they take on.
The Creed brothers could fight. They could if they were like, yeah, they're going to UFC. I'd be like, all right, they're young and they're freaks, man, and they're really good wrestlers, like really good. So those guys would work for me. But I like that they're doing the blood sport. What I'm getting at,
but can they take a punch? I mean, we still don't know that. Let's say they go in there against a guy like, hey, I'm just going to throw a name out there, Dante Almaze, and Dante Almaze hits, drops one of them uppercut, knocks him out. What do you do with the Creeds? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, well, if they're not that tough. They just got knocked out by a guy who's a 500 fighter.
I know. I know. We'll book him against Butterbean. Yeah, WrestleMania. It'll be awesome.
Then all of a sudden, as we talk, I've had the pleasure to talk with guys like Kevin Apollo and even guys from like BQ over at BQ Speaks for TNA. It's like, all right, they get injured now. You're paying a guy to be injured because you have him, they lift him on the UFC. Now the UW's paying them. It's great theory. And look, when it was Brock on, when the UFC was paying Brock and paying WWE, big money for UFC 200, I think it was like, all right, well, it's a big check. If it's not a big check, I think for all parties, it's like,
So like where's the payoff?
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, I think the wrestlers are best used like in this capacity, like Shinsuke passing along knowledge, training, showing up, getting some brand recognition on this kid on social media, helping his career out. He's 10-0. UFC's making a play at Japan big time, and WWE's doing the same thing. And there's a guy named that I know WWE, everyone's eyeing up. His name's Kai Asakura. Are you familiar with this kid? He's 30 years old.
I am.
The UFC, of course, you are. So he's trained in karate, sumo, wrestling, boxing. He's a mixed martial artist. Pro wrestling companies are for certainly eyeing him up. This guy, he's also an influencer or something in Japan. He gets millions of views. His fights for ONE FC or Ryzen, pardon me, on YouTube, they get millions of views, man. And this guy's coming into the UFC, and they're really making a hard play at Japan. You see WWE sort of doing the same thing, and having guys like Shinsuke Nakamura being able to pull, because in Japan, like in America, if they put Shinsuke on the screen, the people might not pop like at an MMA event. But in Japan, if they put fucking Minoru Suzuki or Shinsuke Nakamura or one of these guys on the screen, the audience will still pop for those guys. I'm sure, like Japanese style, right? And if they have Kai Asakura fight there, which should happen, I think, down the line, and then you have Rate Suyura. So I don't know. I'm just saying, keep a lookout for that. And I like the wrestlers being used in this capacity. Now, I also like them being used in the capacity, and that's Shinsuke was at the Power Slap event that same weekend. Now, this was a while ago, guys, but we didn't really break this all the way down. Shinsuke was at the Power Slap event that same weekend. Rey Mysterio was in the crowd, and they have the wrestlers mixing it up with the influencers and sort of shining some light on Power Slap. And Dana White, of course, has talked about the vision is Friday night Power Slap, Saturday night UFC, Sunday night WWE type thing. And who knows how that'll work, because WWE likes to pair their PLEs with NXT, of course, as well. And they won't want to go head to head. But do you think we'll see any wrestlers like we see them in the crowd? Obviously, well, yeah, WWE guys, maybe. Do you think we'll see any like WWE guys go, yeah, I'll do Power Slap? And what do you think of Power Slap just in general?
Oh, I hate Power Slap. As I said, I don't think the problem with doing all this stuff is there's separate contracts, and you know how it is. It's like, you put one or the other. Nobody wants to have those things where it's like, Oh yeah, well,
Right. But listen.
how do we explain that?
Endeavor hits up Dana, and they go, "Look, talk to Triple H. We need to really get some steam behind this power slap. Omos, give him a bag and tell him to come power slap him, or something like that. Like you don't see that? Hey, that Jacob Fatu guy." Or maybe not him.
No,
maybe not him, because if he gets knocked out as fuck.
Yeah,
I know, but we're talking like they back up the money truck and go, look, let's this could be a freak thing. That Otis guy is huge and stocky and has no neck. Can he take a slap? Well, let's give him $500,000 and see if he can. Do you see that happening, or is that too old school Wild West? Do you think even like Dana White? Because I'm asking because power slaps degenerate as dude, okay? And we just had Paige Van Zandt do it, and she was getting Tony Khan's money on the AEW roster until recently. She's fought all over. She's a renowned mixed martial artist. She fought in bare knuckle, and she's a girl that I like. She's like, I'm gonna try everything, and she was actually really good in power slap. She had like better technique and more power in power slap than most people I've seen. Now, granted, my history of power slap is I watched the first season of the reality show. I watched the first event. I watched the second one to give it like okay, this is my last try to get into this. And then I just couldn't. I was like, this is so stupid. And then I haven't watched one since the Paige Van Zandt one. And I sort of just fast forwarded through it till her fight, if you can call it that. So my whole thing is like, is it too Wild West for them to go, all right, yeah, let's get this Omos in there and he's not wrestling. Let's give him $750K to come power slap our heavyweight champ or something like, do you see that? Or is that too just like old school?
Yeah, that's just,
behind us. Even for power slap, yes. So dumb. Even for power slap, you think that's not a thing?
Yes. That's just
okay.
Because it's just, remember, here's the thing with Dana. He's always been a guy who likes to say, we don't do the gimmick fights. And I remember, when we covered him, when I first started covering MMA for him, he always bragged, "Hey, we're not doing gimmick fights."
That's
I mean, he only did it for with the tour of Tony because it was James Toney was like literally stalking him, like
showing up at press conferences.
Everybody, and it was like, all right, fine, we'll just do it. And even then, he regretted it. And I remember like, oh god, I can't believe he did this year.
That was amazing.
Every other time,
I remember winning $50 on that fight.
Yes,
from my friend.
And I remember even afterwards, it was like just a look on his face, like I can't believe he did that. It's like when you get caught like riding a moped in a bikini, and you're just have that look of shame, like I can't believe I did this. Why?
I know, but Paige
that was Dana.
But here's the thing, bro. Paige did the power slap though, so like. I get the idea of like, no, what's the risk reward, but like, what was the risk reward for Paige Van Zandt? I guess she's a real
because
fighter.
She's, what? Here's why. Because she was a UFC fighter who did pro wrestling. So for Dana, it's like, all right, hey, she started off as an MMA fighter. Yeah, she dabbled in pro wrestling, but it's not like he looks at it as like, well, it's like one of it's like Chael Sonnen. Hey, he dabbled in pro wrestling. It's not one of these guys who I just grab from pro wrestling with no talent and then just slapped him on power slap.
What about a Bobby Lashley then? What about a Bobby Lashley? He's a real legit fighter. He's a real legit pro wrestler.
And Bobby Lashley's never been in the UFC, has he?
Well, no, but man, he was like 15-4 or something. 15-2, I think his record is phenomenal.
But he's never been in the UFC.
I know.
I get it.
So him for power slap. I'm saying MMA to wrestling or wrestling to MMA. Like we're talking, he's a legit guy. He's fought in Strikeforce. He's fought in Bellator. He's fought real guys.
Why would WWE do that? I mean, if you're WWE,
I don't know. That's what I'm just saying. Like, do you think we'll get that crazy?
No,
I didn't think we'd ever see Paige Van Zandt do it either.
Oh, I do. Because because to me, once Paige Van Zandt lost in BKFC. Once, there was nothing for her in AEW, it's like, well, what else is there to do? I mean, it's either power slap, porn. Power slap, porn. I mean, we're joking, but it's like, what else is there to do? It's like,
you what?
Think of it. I mean, she was not winning in MMA.
Yeah.
She had flamed out in the UFC. Money to her is a big thing. So it's like, all right, let's just do power slap because that's what it was done to. She's either doing power slap or she's doing the Misfits boxing. We're not talking, an acting career here. This is what her talent is really. It's combat sports, but she's not good enough to compete in the high levels of MMA or boxing.
I think you're right about that.